Okay, what we're going to do today is install, or at least fit, this part of the frame rail, which I recently acquired from Pull-Apart, to this component, the whole left front suspension brace. I figured it would be much easier to do this while it's on a car that's straight, so that I can make all my measurements and get it lined up correctly before I'm putting it over on the other car and then just guessing. So I also, besides the frame rail, I also got a bumper support. This was, thank you Pull-Apart. It's about 30 something bucks, and this was about 30 something bucks. So included in that was the end plates, which is really nice. And now I've got them all separated, and I've spent a bunch of time cutting and fitting. So this looks like it's pretty close. The next step, though, that I wanted to share with you is leveling. So you see here, I've got one of these nifty laser levels. This is about a $50 investment. And the first thing I wanted to do is level it to the car, or make sure the car is level. So I've found a spot here, and it's about, I don't know, 1 3/8 here, and I had to change the jack positioning on this side to get it to be the same. But with that distance there, now I know that this car is level, so that when I put the bumper on, I want to make sure that I'll lower this guy down, and I'll make sure that the bumper's level to make sure that I've got this way. And I'm going to use the bolt holes, right? There's some play in it, left and right, but I'm going to use those and the positioning of this to make sure that I've got it generally in shape left to right. There's a possibility I may have to go back to Pull-Apart if I don't have it from my records to figure out this distance here. But what I did with the other car was I measured, this was Rachel's Charger back last year. I measured from here to here, and then you can reverse it and measure from here to here to make sure that you've got that left-right distance right. And once I've got all those things lined up, then I'll have my son come in and weld that thing in place. Now, welding is going to be a little bit of fun, and because this all has to come out, it'll actually not be terrible. But when he welds it the first time, I'll have him weld just a seam on this side and a seam on the other side, and then when I remove this whole thing, we'll flip it over so that he doesn't have to weld upside down to do the bottom of it. Anyway, that's where this is right now. Just thought I'd share a little bit more about how I'm going to make all this stuff square, and I'll bring you some updates later. Okay, so I've got the bumper mounted on with a couple bolts. You can see right here, that's about 3/16, and camera's blocking, but that one is less. So we have, this has to go down just a little bit, but I think the bigger problem I'm seeing is, I don't know if you can see it here, but this guy is not level. This piece is twisted, and I believe that's because this piece is hitting. Now, when I ground these all out, I was prying this back this way with to free up the piece of frame that I used on Rachel's Charger. So I tried to bend this back, but I bent it back too far, and I'm hitting right here. So this whole thing is pushed over too far. So I think the first order of business is going to be to bend this guy back so that I can get the placement on that right, and then I can work on the fine adjustment of the height for this. Okay, here's the last update before we get to welding. I think I've got this guy lined up really good. on both sides, and took a little bit of work to get this piece. This piece was holding this frame rail too far over to the side. I still don't like the angle of all this, but what I'll do is I'll have Kurt do some welding, probably on the back side, just to tie it down, put a couple of them here, and then I'll move this back down so it's more snug. We got a seam here, which is not too bad. I think that's very manageable in terms of closing it up, and with the weld, and the same thing goes over here. This is just a little bit wider than I wanted, but I'm pretty sure that he can bridge that gap without too much trouble. So I think we'll have a pretty solid piece here. Everything lines up. I don't know if you can see the bolt holes, but the bolt holes on here are all lined up as well. So I know that this is good, and the paint where it originally was is really very close. So I feel pretty comfortable about that. There's also, there it is, the bolt. You can see it just fits right in. So all of this is lined up pretty solid. Next thing I'll do is take it all apart and clean these up. Clean up the seams where the get the paint off, so that we can get a good bond. So, and yes, my Challenger will have parts from Pull Apart on it. Just a quick update on the frame. As you can see, I've cleaned all the surfaces off. This guy's lined up, spot check, everything's ready to go. So first chance my welder has to get over here, we'll close up those seams, and then I can go to the business of removing the rest of this from the car. Progress on the Challenger. I've started removing the bad section from the car. You can see these are all the bent up pieces. There's still a lot of decisions to make here, like how I'm going to make this transition. And there's a seam here where I plan to remove this, but underneath is a cross member mount, which I believe I have to, well, unfortunately the cross member mount's not the same between this car and the Charger. I'm assuming it's because that is designed to accommodate all-wheel drive and this is not. So I probably have to use this one. I just got to figure out how to get that apart. And I'm basically going to break this right here along this seam, and then somewhere in here, I left extra so I can pick and choose how I want to do that, but somewhere in here I'll get that out. So my next step, I think, is going to be to start taking out these spot welds here, and so that I can pull more of this metal off. All right, so let's take a closer look at some of the damage here and the progress, the recent progress. First, you can see, if you get a good look at this, you can see that this is a little bit buckled right up here. This is, I don't believe that's supposed to be there, so I'm gonna have to pull that down. You can see this is still a little bit buckled too, but there's plenty of room if I flatten this out for that to go on back up. I haven't decided yet. I may have to go a little bit further over here to so I can get access to that stuff. I'm not sure yet. But all of this here, I've taken after that first cut, I rough cut it, but then I just went through here and drilled these all out and removed the rest of the trim. I had to remove the transmission mount, and like I said, unfortunately they're different between the vehicles, and so I was careful when I drilled these out not to go through so they can get welded back on. This one there's a piece that goes underneath here that went all the way underneath this, so when I take it out of the other car I'll have to cut in the back because I want to save that piece. There's multiple layers here. It's going to make it fun to get it all welded back together, but we'll sort it out. I also noticed that we've got some damage up here. This needs to be straightened out. That's definitely not right. And of course I knew about these parts, but I'll start picking at that here pretty soon. And I also think one of the next things that's going to happen is I'm going to fix the floor between the seat mounts. It's a little bit low and crinkly. So that's it for now.
This isn't the actual weld.
Yeah, okay. You're just putting something down that you can...
I'm welding on top of it. I'll probably
close it up?
Yeah.
Alright, so I was successfully able to remove this piece under here. I think I showed this, but there's a lot of damage here that needs to be straightened. It'll be a lot easier to do that without this part in the way. Plus, this part was bent on the bottom. If I'm unable to straighten it, I can get that same part out of the other car. This also raised some questions about where is this? In other words, I know we took a big hit right here, pushing this way, and I mean to the point where you can't see it real well, but the paint there is cracked, so it's flexed it all the way back there. So I need to figure out where to put this so that it's back in the factory location. I'll be able to put this piece on to get some of the bearings, and I'll be able to measure distances from here to here, from here to here to get some of it. But the other thing I decided this morning, I realized that I saved the dash structure from the Charger. It's not dented or bent at all, so I should be able to attach these to the back of the A-pillar, and then this goes in the center, right here to the shock tower, and that should tell me pretty much where this needs to go. I'll be able to figure out which directionally, this way and this way, how to get that into the right place between that and the measurements and this bottom piece. Also, it just makes a mess. This was all clean and vacuumed out, but I was busy yesterday with my grinding out all these spot welds, which went really well. I got a new bit and it cuts pretty good. And then I also cleaned out that frame, all the expanding foam back to about here, because I wanted, when we weld these, I don't want to catch that stuff on fire. So it's one of those processes that has to happen along the way. Also, this showed up yesterday, so I just put it on here. Now, obviously it's not staying on this car, but it's showing me that, you know, I can get the alignment of this piece is okay with factory settings. It's an aftermarket piece, I'm sure. It's got no markings on it. I transferred over all of this stuff from the original upper radiator support, so that's out now. I also threw out a whole bunch of stuff that won't be needing anymore. So just to kind of clean up my garage space a little bit. Still a long way to go, but it's better. And took a little bit of time and organized my spares. I got a tub and filled some stuff up, and then there's all the bags stuff right there. Also worth noting is I've removed the front subframe from this vehicle, and I've removed everything that's in the way here for removing this section of the Charger to move over there. Okay, here we go around the horn with some updates. I marked both vehicles vertically here to make sure that I found the center. That's where I'm going to split the firewall. I'll probably take some extra material when I remove that out of the parts car, but that's what's going to happen here. And then I went ahead and removed all these spot welds up here. So we're getting down to just the structure in the back and the sides to get that part out. It's coming pretty soon. Straighten this out a little bit here so that next time my son comes over, he can weld those up. This one has been quite a bit of work done. This piece was out from here to here. I still don't have it 100%. What I found was that this was kind of bent upward in the middle, and so I had some work to do to try to get that down or try to make it look like a satisfactory arc. I started questioning a lot of things, so I ended up putting the laser level right here, actually right on top. That's what the battery's doing. It was part of the stand to try to figure out where I was height wise, and I'm still a little bit high in the middle, but maybe by 1/8. So I think the next step to resolve this is to remove those pieces over there so I can take a good measurement of the width of that beam and how wide it's supposed to be, so I can tell if I'm crushing it in too far or not far enough. I'll get that straightened around. Also, I found quite a bit of damage here up underneath. You can kind of see here, this edge here was pushed up and this was down, so I had to bring that all back around, and then this beam behind here, this part was definitely not straight at all, so I had to do some work to get that right. This is why it's really hard to make one of these right after a crash, because there's this internal damage you just can't see. Also, you can see I've test fit the this inside structure here, and I feel pretty good about that right now. I rounded this corner off, so you can see I'm forward, but it's like maybe a 1/16. I'm gonna worry about that 1/16. I was able to, with just a little bit of pressure on this, to get this up, get these things to line up pretty well. So I think some of my straightening over here helped bring this forward a little bit. I never really did have to put the frame machine on that. I have this lined up pretty good. I still have to cut a window in there, which is what this is about, so that there's a seam that's going to have to be welded on the bottom. There's no way you're going to be able to weld that upside down and get a good bead. So we're just going to end up having to do more welding to put it all back together. Also, well, the floor here is not straight, but it's considerably straighter. And now we have this lining up again. This part definitely did not line up. We're about, I don't know, between 1/8 and 1/4 that way. And I took some measurements. I believe it's possible that at this spot the tunnel is pushed over by probably about 1/8. Not too worried about it. I have this level, and I just stretched these out a little bit. Plus this is pushed in a little bit, which is kind of aggravating the situation. The frame rails are still the right distance apart. For a minute I was concerned that maybe I had a frame rail that was doing this and that it was lined up there but here, but looking at it some more, I'm pretty sure that I've got that problem there. Or this is just pushed in just a tiny bit. Oh, one more thing before I'm preparing some welding. We've got this guy fitted in here. I'm going to have this welded in place just because pretty soon I'm going to need this as a place to mount the bumper for alignment purposes. So it makes sense to get that done. And this little piece here, I've been storing it in the frame and I don't want to forget it. Every time I bang on the car or do anything, it falls out. So I'm going to have him weld that in too, so I don't forget. Keep our welding sessions kind of small but get things done. And so I think the next big thing obviously is to finish cutting this out. I need to get pretty precise about where I want to make the cuts, especially along this first seat rail here. I think I'm going to break the metal. I'll probably break the metal up here and I'll put the new one underneath. Yeah, probably underneath this. So I won't need to go past this thing. It's just a matter of where in here I want to make the break. So I've got to make some final decisions about that. And then also how I'm going to handle this multi-layer corner here. So I think those are that, and then make cuts, get the thing out. The other thing I did was I ordered the glass so that I can set the glass on here and make sure that this guy isn't too wavy or too down or up or something, so I know what I'm up against before I start making it permanent. And there's a certain amount of play that you can make up in the sealer, right? Maybe up to 1/8 of an inch, but you can't. You just can't have huge gaps down there. So that also means I'll probably be installing the windshield at some point, but that's quite a ways down the road. Okay, I think this thing's about ready to come out. Let's see here. There we go. That was the main give. There we go. Easy as pie. All right, the final disassembly had a few surprises. This one, this brake support, the way it's configured, it was not going to allow me to go forward, which is what this little curve here was going to require it to go forward to come out. So I had to cut this. But the main holdup was right here. These two are hidden down inside here. And there was really it was very difficult to find a way to get something behind there to make sure that I had the connection free. But once I did that, it came out as you saw. There were some other challenges here. Because of the way they put the layers together, I did have to cut this brace so that I could get to this metal and make a clean cut. It's no big deal. That can just be welded back together when the time comes. So we got this guy out. I did take a couple of last minute measurements so that when I'm putting it in, I could make sure that I have the widths right all the way across. And I mean, now is going to be a good time. I'll flip this guy upside down and have Kurt weld the bottom edges of those seams. And I'll probably spend a little bit of time getting after this rust where I don't have to work with it over my head. So I banged on it with a hammer. It's still solid. There's some layering rust, or there's some rust forming there, but it's not through yet. So I'll patch that up. If I'm not happy with it, well, I can always have Kurt weld on a piece from the other car just to brace it up. So I ended up removing the bottom of this support for the windshield from this vehicle because it's all nice and straight. And I put it in here. This really helped narrow things down in terms of alignment, because this came out in really good shape, and so I could use it as a template. Figured out some of these things are wrong. This is still off by a fraction, but I think it'll be okay. I'll just clamp it down. But this is what we have here. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but this thing is welded underneath. I had to cut it, but we can weld that back together on a vertical. Welding upside down is really difficult. So I was going to have challenges either way with that other one, because this one, at least I know, is placed correctly on this bracket. So hopefully I'll have Kurt over here fairly soon to start welding some of these things back together. I feel pretty good that this is in its final resting place, and we're going to start putting things back together here really soon.